right, ladies and gentlemen, up next for our first speech of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the director of the Human Milk Institute right here at UCSD, Dr. Lars Bode.
Good morning, everyone. It's quite a moment. It's good to see so many people in the room, which means a few things. It's a lot of people in the room, and we have only that much space, especially when it comes to lunch afterwards. So I ask you all for your patience. You might have to share some sandwiches, maybe a seat. But what it really means is that there is a lot of people interested in human milk that are in the room, not just here in San Diego, where we know we have a powerhouse of human milk research and application and community. But really, there's people from all over California, people from all over the country, people from all over the world. So it's great to see that San Diego really attracted that many people that are interested in human milk to come to San Diego today and celebrate what really is a historic moment. To have a Human Milk Institute at one of the top 20 universities in the world is really remarkable. It shouldn't be remarkable because really every institute or every university should have an institute on human milk. But there's really only one institute or one institution that has now made an investment to say we want to have a full support for a Human Milk Institute. And I thank the leadership, Patty Mason, Chancellor will be here later, Vice Chancellor Carruthers, our former Vice Chancellor David Brenner was very instrumental in this. Gabby Haddad, of course, supporting us from the very beginning when I joined the faculty in 2009. And then Tina, Lisa, Jay, we really moved this together over a decade almost, I would say. And finally, we have this day to have a Human Milk Institute at UC San Diego. So thank you all for coming. I'm going to guide you a little bit through why human milk, why do we do this here in San Diego, who are we, and guide you through this a little bit through the next few minutes. So why human milk? And I always show this statement here. It's a little bit old already from 2016 from the Lancet Breastfeeding Series, but I find it very powerful statement. And it says that the lives of 823,000 children, so almost 1 million children and 20,000 mothers each year could be, the death of them could be averted through universal breastfeeding along with $300 billion US dollars. And that's per year. So 1 million lives, both on the maternal and on the infant side. Just to give you a few examples here. So if we talk about diarrheal disease, every single day we lose about 2,200 infants and children under the age of 5 to diarrheal disease. On the other hand, we know that children who are breastfed are at substantially lower risk to develop diarrheal disease and respiratory infections and die from them. So there's something about human milk that saves lives from these infectious diseases. If we look at preterm infants, about 5% of the very low birth weight infants develop a condition called necrotizing enterocolitis. On the other hand, we know that preterm infants who receive human milk are at a 6 to 10-fold lower risk to develop this disease. And this could be a deadly condition. We lose a lot of preterm infants to necrotizing enterocolitis. So if we understand what's in human milk to save them, it could be extremely powerful. But it's not only the immediate benefits of human milk while the infant receives human milk. We know there are benefits for life. We know that infants who receive human milk are at a lower risk to develop obesity or are overweight. They're at a lower risk to develop diabetes. They're potentially smarter. So they have a higher IQ and a higher earning potential. And this is after adjusting it for socioeconomic status. And it's not just the infants. It's not just the recipient of human milk, it's also the person that gives the human milk. So we know that lactating people are also at a lower risk to develop diabetes, lower risk of cardiovascular disease, so heart attack and stroke, and have a lower risk for breast cancer and ovarian cancer. So there are benefits for both mom and the baby. In fact, we can extend this. We've done some work here at UCSD to show that there's components in human milk that could potentially be beneficial for people of all ages. So there could be new therapeutics in human milk as a template. And we've seen this for inflammatory bowel disease, for arthritis, cardiovascular disease. Imagine there's components in human milk that could potentially lower the risk of having a heart attack. And we lose about 18 million people to heart attacks and strokes on an annual basis. Not saying that we want to feed them human milk, please leave that to the babies, but understanding how these mechanisms work in the maternal infant space and then extrapolate that and take in components, synthesize them and use them in therapeutics that are safe because we're already using them for babies and feed them to them every 2-3 hours, it's extremely powerful. We can take this one step further. We could argue that human milk might actually be better for the climate. Just think about that. Make an infant formula. You have to source the ingredients for that somewhere. And then you have to transport it around the world. It's a huge climate footprint. Well, this is your alternative on the other side. And we already know human milk is first class. So there is no alternative that is better than human milk. We do know that there is infant formula. And I think we all agree that breast milk is superior to infant formula. However, I think we can also agree that there will be infants that receive infant formula. For whatever reason, we shouldn't judge, we shouldn't stigmatize. We should help parents and healthcare providers to make informed decisions based on data and evidence. But there will always be infants that receive infant formula. And we should make sure that that infant formula is as safe and as good as it gets. And I think that's part of our responsibility as well. So human milk can serve as a template there to see what is in human milk, how does it work, how can we potentially make infant formula as good as it gets for those infants that will eventually get infant formula. And extending this another dimension, and that's about equity. We know that breastfeeding rates for Black people, indigenous people, people of color, marginalized communities are much lower than it is for the more affluent communities. So there's a huge problem in health disparities, and we need to address that as well. If we know that human milk is so powerful to have health benefits, to potentially save lives, every single baby should have the best start to life. And it doesn't matter in which zip code you're born or what the color of your skin is. And that's something that HMI is planning also to address. So who is HMI? Who are we? It's not a one-man show. Not a three-people show either, but just to introduce you, the directors. So Christina Chambers, or Tina Chambers as we know her, right in the front, our co-director. And then Lisa Sternwagen, another good friend and co-director that is working with us to bring this Human Milk Institute to life. And I'm going to introduce them later a little bit more. But that's not the full story either. We have the fourth person here who left us in the meantime. Shortly before the pandemic, Jay Kim was instrumental in thinking through and conceptualizing a Human Milk Institute. He went to Cincinnati afterwards, but he's here today to speak. And we want to honor that he was really part of that journey from the beginning as well. And that's not the full story either. So here comes Hannah Johnson. Not only is she a strong supporter when it comes to our financial and philanthropic support, but she's really been a sounding board and a good friend, really, to discuss the ideas and play things back and forth over coffee. And it's been a real pleasure working with you and having you support this journey. We call her our CPO, not 3CPO, but CPO, and that's our Chief Assistance Officer, who's really pushing and knocking on doors and making sure that they open, get us in a room with the right people. So thank you so much for your support in getting this off the ground. And we're hiring. So we desperately need help to have an executive director that can run the Human Milk Institute. We are putting this position together actually next week. So watch out for that. If you have some business background and you're good and you're really interested in human milk, please come and lead the Human Milk Institute from a business perspective. We strongly need someone that can help us on that front. All right. So believe it or not, we're about 7 or 8 months old and we already have 40 faculty members. So HMI has faculty members from all over disciplines. And that can go from real basic research, people that work in the lab and molecules and microbes and all those things, to people that care for babies, So our physicians that work either in the NICU or in newborn. We have people that work in the milk bank. We have people that work on education, social sciences, and so forth, and so on and so forth. So this is just the beginning. If we find faculty that has some interest in human milk, and even if it's completely out of discipline, that's the people that we want to attract, because we want to make this as interdisciplinary as possible to get as many perspectives as possible to human milk. All right, and then we have our scientific advisory board that's really supporting us along the way. And I'm highlighting every person here real quickly because it really shows you what the background of these people are and where we want to go with the Human Milk Institute. Am I going in and out with the microphone here occasionally? Good? Okay. So let's start with Cheryl Anderson. She's our Dean of the new School of Public Health. So that tells you already in which dimension that is going. Second, we have Brookie Best, who is our new Dean of the School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences. Tells you a little bit about where that's going. Then we have Christina Chamberlain, who is the Clinical Director and Lead Faculty of our Lactation Education Program at Extended Studies. Education Studies. Tells you a little bit about where that's going. You heard Gabby Haddad already. And you see you're screwing up my slide here a little bit. It's going all the way down there, so you have to move this up a little bit here. You just have too many titles. You have too many things going on there. So Gabby Haddad, you saw already, Department Chair for Pediatrics, but also at the Children's Hospital, the Chief Scientific Officer and the Physician-in-Chief. So again, tells you where that's going. And then last but not least, Karen Maston, my direct boss really, is the Chief of Neonatology. So there's a strong focus on neonatology and on the NICU. Okay, so this is the 5 people that initially will support us from a scientific advisory board perspective. So now what is HMI? It's great, there's a few people and hang out and have coffee to do things, but what is HMI really? So this is not starting from scratch. HMI is more an umbrella structure over the centers and the programs that are already in existence at UC San Diego. And I'll go through these programs in a little bit more detail over the next few minutes. So let's start out with MOMICOR, the Lars Rosenquist Foundation Mother Milk Infant Center of Research Excellence. And we call that the engine of discovery. MOMICOR was endowed in 2017 by a very generous gift of the family Lars Rosenquist Foundation. And Katrina Lichtner, all the way in the back there, wave real quick, the managing director, very strong supporter for our center here, but certainly for human milk around the world. The foundation has invested about $100 million in human milk over the last few years and invested in other centers as well that we're now trying to bring together to work together as a collaboration or as a consortium. I'm going to get into that a little bit. So 2017, and what is MOMICOR doing? So we have incubators where we get people together that we think that have something together that they can work on, some collaboration, and then let them think about project ideas and what can you do in the human milk space. These are usually people that haven't really worked on human milk before. And then we put the little carrot out, put out seed grants that they can apply for, and then activate really people from all over campus to work on human milk and apply their technologies and their expertise to human milk. And this has worked quite well. So we've supported about 21 different projects so far over the last 5 years. And again, these people come from all over campus and apply their technology and expertise to human milk. And what we believe is that innovation really lives at that intersection. We don't want to always be together in a silo and work on the same thing all the time. We want to bring in people that have a completely different perspective and apply that to human milk. That's how you grow. That's how you develop innovation. And this has been a fantastic program. We just had one person, I'm not sure if Bob Tukey is here, who is about to receive a $3.5 million grant from the NIH based on the work that he's done out of these seed grants. So there's a real financial return on investment as well. You can see how this is now moving forward. In addition to the seeds, we also have MAMI Fellows. So that's our developing the next generation. Sarah Mukarzel was the first one as we started. And the next fellow right now is Simon Rennick, who sits in the audience over there as well. Okay, so this is really the people on the ground that do the research and that we develop into the future leaders in this field, and that's important too. All right, and as I mentioned already, the Family Larsen Rosenquist Foundation has endowed multiple different centers around the world, in Oxford, in Zurich, in Perth, and we're now trying to build those centers together in a consortium, and we just had our first in-person consortium meeting on Tuesday here in San Diego, and a few of the chairs are sitting in the back there. All right, so that's Mamicore. That's like the engine, so to speak, that drives the research. And supported really, and a different entity that's been there much longer already, driven by Tina Chambers and directed by Carrie Bertrand, is the Human Milk Research Biorepository. And I asked them a couple of days ago, how many milk samples do we actually have in that biorepository? And we have about slightly over 100,000 aliquots of human milk in the biorepository. So that's a fantastic resource to do research. And I let Tina talk about that a little bit more in detail in the afternoon, but just to highlight a few of the things that are happening where we look at different medications, vaccines, maternal infections, recreational substances. I think you mentioned remdesivir was a study that you just finished. We've done some work on COVID when the pandemic broke out. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So it's a wonderful resource that was already available, and that is now part of the HMI umbrella. And you'll hear more about that in the afternoon. Then we have Imprint. So that's a Center of Excellence in Therapeutics led by multiple different people. Here it's a multi-PI grant. Main person here driving that is Adriana Tremoulet and Tina Chambers, but you see other faces here in the room that are part of that mechanism. So what's Imprint? Imprint stands for Maternal and Pediatric Precision in Therapeutics, funded by the NICHD. Thank you, Drew. And there, what is that? So that's a network that the NICHD is putting together currently, where you apply, and then there is 2 centers of excellence in therapeutics currently funded, one here at UC San Diego, one over in Vanderbilt, and then a supporting knowledge and research coordination center that's shared between Indiana University and Ohio State University. And what UCSD is doing in this space, we have a strong focus on human milk in this network. So the problem is that, this is taken from a paper that Drew actually was part of, it was in the first row here. The statistics here say that 70% of women who breastfeed or pump their milk take some form of medication or supplements. On the other hand, 90% of those approved medications do not have appropriate drug labeling for pregnant or lactating women. So we don't really know what they do in that space. Pregnant and lactating women are usually excluded from the testing. Good, to a certain extent, but that also means that we don't have a lot of information. And that needs to change as well. And that's something that UC San Diego's Imprint is trying to tackle. And we're focusing on antibiotics there first. So we're looking at this mother milk infant triad. Can human milk be a vehicle for drugs? So mom taking a drug, is the drug making it through milk into the infant? And are there any disadvantages to that? But that's only one aspect of that. We're also looking at how maternal therapeutics alter human milk composition. Because if human milk composition is altered, that might have an effect on the infant. We also look at how human milk components affect pediatric therapeutics. So imagine you're giving therapeutics to the infant. Infant is breastfed. How do milk components now alter the therapeutics in the infant? Do they synergize? Do they lower the efficacy? Is there a safety issue potentially? And then last but not least, we look to human milk components as new therapeutics. So can we learn from the maternal infant space to develop new therapeutics that we can deploy to people of all ages? So that's what Imprint is doing. The annual meeting, if you don't have enough of San Diego, if you want to stay around, 2 weeks later, we have the annual Imprint meeting here in San Diego, if that's of your interest. Okay, then we have the milk bank. We heard a lot about the milk bank already. Lisa Stellwagen and Alison Wolf are the main drivers there, but we have many people in the room here that are really passionate about human milk. You'll hear about it throughout the day. It's a group of people really that have that energy. If you walk into the milk bank, I can't even describe it. You have to see it yourself. Lisa will be happy to give you tours there. But it's really this energy in the room that is very unique. So you really feel that these people work there because they really have a heart in that space. Okay, so what's the milk bank doing? Again, Lisa will talk about that more. in the afternoon, but it's really getting donations from the community. Processing the milk that we get from the community, so we're measuring macronutrient content. We're processing the milk and pasteurizing it to make sure it's safe. And then it gets labeled, stored, and is ready for deployment. And this is how the deployment looks like. So you really have the crews, walking out and marching with the coolers there and bringing that to the medical centers where it's fed to the most vulnerable babies in need of human milk. And this is how that looks like in the unit. So these are photos. The video is not, but the photos are from our unit where we support preterm infants with human milk. And we really want to take this to the next level. So this is a photo from yesterday's workshop on human milk banking, where we got together with some of the experts in this field and discussed what are the barriers in human milk banking. How can we bring this field forward? How can we innovate in this space to make it more effective, to make it safer, to make it better than it is already, so that even more babies will get access to human milk. So you hear more about that in the future. And then we have the clinical program. The SPIN program started by Jay Kim and Lisa Stellwagen, and now being led by Ruth Hammer and Erica Clemens, is really how do we teach women in the unit to provide human milk, to how to breastfeed a preterm baby. How do you do that? And then as a follow-up, led by Isla Boyce and Michelle Leff currently, is the premature infant nutrition clinic. So now babies that are going home or in the transition from the hospital to go home, how do we keep that support going? To make sure that if we start them on human milk, if we start the baby on human milk and enable breastfeeding, that they're not dropping off the moment they come home when there's no support anymore. Okay. 12 years ago, the 5 steps to breastfeeding in the NICU was developed. So that's a step-by-step guide on how to provide human milk and how to breastfeed a preterm baby. And you see the 5 steps here: skin-to-skin contact, first time at the breast, learning how to breastfeed, getting better at it, and then getting ready to go home. And there's 5 videos that we actually found on YouTube that go through this. And you'll see here in a minute. The beauty about these videos is one down here. We highlight this here. It says on YouTube, from an accredited hospital. Very important that you have that credibility. There's a bunch of stuff on YouTube, but to have that accreditation stamp on there is extremely powerful. And then if you go underneath here, so you scroll down, you see this is 12 years old. But what you also see, and I find this fascinating, it has 6.2 million views. Forget about the Kardashians. the YouTube stars right down in the front here. So an amazing resource, 12 years old. It really shows you the track record that we have already at UCSD, where people really look at not only what is in human milk and how does this all work, but how can we get this to the baby and make it sustainable. All right, so that's the SPIN program. That's the different programs that we have under the umbrella of HMI currently as we started out. We also, and I want to highlight, have at UC San Diego Extended Studies a lactation education program. So we want to take advantage of that as well. If we already have an education track, let's take advantage of it. All right, so what else is HMI going to do? This is kind of what we had already. We put it under umbrella. What else are we going to do? So let me highlight 5 different things that we're planning, and there's more than that, but let me at least highlight these 5 here. So one thing is milk analytics, and you'll be surprised how little we actually know about human milk and its composition. You would think that's the one thing that we know everything about. We don't know that much about it at all. It's a National Academy of Sciences report that came out a few years ago that I was part of, and if you go through the literature and you see just for micronutrients, how little we actually know, how substantiated that knowledge is, it's scary. What have we done the whole time? Sorry, I shouldn't say that. There's some experts in the room. Debbie, thank you. But truth is, there is a lot of opportunity still, a lot of potential to really see what is in human milk, develop assays that are validated, that can measure accurately and robust what is in human milk. So that's one thing we're going to do. And you'll hear later about this human milk as a systems biology, as a biological system. So studying human milk with a systems biology approach. There's a few things you need for systems biology. You need to be able to manipulate, measure, and model the system, and then go through the system through cycles and see that your model most accurately predicts the system. Well, if we can't accurately measure the system, then we don't have a systems biology approach. So we really need to make an investment on the measuring side of what is in human milk to accurately capture the system. And that's why we're starting a milk analytics core. So we're currently building out the space down in the biomedical research facility to have dedicated assays that look to human milk in a validated way that we can then open to the community. Okay, then engagement and application. We are aware that most of the research that we're doing needs to somehow get to an application. So we want to partner with you. If you're interested in developing new ingredients, new therapeutics, diagnostics, whatever that looks like, tools at point of care to measure human milk components, please reach out to us. We're very eager to collaborate with you. However, if you're only in it for your own gain, your own financial gain, sell some snake oil, please don't come to us. We don't want to work with you. If you're engaging in unethical and unfair marketing practices to exploit the most vulnerable people at their most vulnerable times during pregnancy and lactation, please don't come to us. So we want to work on something that's mission-driven, ethical, and shares our values. So if you're in on that, please come and work with us. And of course, at the end of the pandemic, COVID, what we really need is a rapid response force to make sure that human milk is safe and that we have safe access to human milk. And we've seen this during the pandemic, during the COVID-19 pandemic, when we had some resources in place, mostly due to the biorepository that was already up and running, to be able to respond to the COVID pandemic very quickly. So we teamed up with the biorepository and investigators at UCLA that did the virology, got immediate response again from our partners at the Family Larsen Rosenquist Foundation. It was literally a phone call overnight because of the time difference. For me it was night, for Katrina it was in the morning. When I woke up, I had an email in my inbox saying, yes, the board approved, here's the money. That's what real partnership looks like when you're in a crisis mode. At the same time, again, the Johnson family also stepped up and said, we want to support this as well. There is a need for COVID research, and we want to make sure that human milk is safe. So thank you again for that immediate partnership during the time of crisis. We got some support from Medela, from the Mother's Milk Bank in Austin. Kim Updegrove is in the back there, helped us quite a bit. Hombana helped us as well. And this is like helping with shipping, helping with the pumps that we needed. It's like immediate, like in-kind supply. Very useful. So we were able to answer to the pandemic very quickly. If you remember, it feels like ages, but the WHO declared the pandemic in March 2020. And we were able to publish a paper to show that human milk is safe in August. So that's 161 days from problem to publication. Well, if you're in science, that's like, wow, that's amazing. That's great. How did you do this? So this is all the way from developing the research strategy, securing the funding, recruiting subjects, collecting samples, validating assays for human milk, analyze the samples, run the statistics, write the manuscript, get it through peer review, and get it published. Right? So you would say, wow, 161 days, that's pretty fast. But it's not fast enough. Because it means 161 days of parents and healthcare providers being in the dark. Is it safe? There were papers that show, oh, there's mRNA in human milk. Well, it turns out it wasn't replication-competent virus, but there was a scare at that time. And we cannot afford that, so we need to be doing better next time. And we need to be better prepared. And that's why we put a very strong focus on that rapid response team under the Human Milk Institute, teaming up with our Prepare Institute that was funded just a year prior, where we have all the epidemiologists, the virologists that are working here at UCSD, bringing them together to answer to the next pandemic and the next threat faster. And we just completed the study on monkeypox, so I can tell you, if you pasteurize human milk, monkeypox is dead. So we need that information. We need to make sure that the next threat is not getting into human milk. All right, so bringing those closer together, good. Okay, last but not least, I think I have two more. Education. Okay? I think we need to put in education. We're a university, there is a focus on education. So let's play a game here real quick. Who knows the game, which one doesn't belong? You know that? So it's this thing. I'll give you an example here. Which one doesn't belong? So it could be the color, it could be the font, it could be the shape. Okay, let's do this for human milk real quick. You ready? Okay. So let's take these 4 cards here. Okay. Which one doesn't belong? Okay. Is it the color? Which one is it? Okay, let's go through this. There's a heart. There's a specialty called cardiology and a specialist called cardiologist. Right? On the other side, we have the liver. There's hepatology, the hepatologist. Anyone want to drive this further for the next 2 cards? Believe it or not, there is proctology and the proctologist. And you can actually Google it. It exists. And while you're Googling it, try this one. There is no lactology. There is no lactologist. So why is that? If we think about mammary gland, we think about breast cancer, which is very important. Why are we not thinking about the normal function of the mammary gland, which is to make milk and nurture the baby? There's no specialty. How can that be? Well, fortunately, we have the lactation consultants that are extremely helpful on the ground to help parents meet their lactation goals, their breastfeeding goals. Extremely important. We're not going to replace them. There's a push to include more breastfeeding medicine, build a fellowship around that. We don't want to replace that. We want to make sure that the physicians are trained when it comes to lactation. To generate that basic knowledge, to look at human milk on a molecular basis and bringing it all the way over to public health doesn't exist. Let's create it and let them all work together so we can all feed off of each other. So my goal for HMI for the next few years before I retire is I would love to see, ideally in the School of Public Health, to have a degree where we have the first lactologist graduate from UCSD that then can work together with the lactation consultants and the medical profession to have a real specialty that's called lactology. If we can get that for the proctologist, I'm pretty sure we can do that for lactation as well. All right, and then last but not least, we don't want HMI to be just an academic endeavor. It's not just up here in La Jolla on campus, and then once you're crossing campus boundaries, no one talks about it anymore. We want to take advantage of the very strong community that we have in San Diego, whether it's the San Diego County Breastfeeding Coalition or the many other groups that many of you in the room here are part of. San Diego is extremely passionate about breastfeeding and human milk. And we want to capitalize on that. We want to work together. We want to make sure that what we do on campus in academia actually has an effect on the community, locally and globally. And again, last week we had our first workshop organized by Gretchen Banderly, Shannon Kim, and Shana Wright, where we got a bunch of people from the community in the room. And for me, I was just listening in. It was a learning experience. I learned so much from the people in the community. There's so much work that needs to be done. So I really appreciate you all coming together and working with us and being open, having that trust to come and work with the university. I know there's a lot of struggles in the community, and we want to work with you to address those. All right, the last one. Why San Diego? Why are we doing this here? Well, first of all, we have a fairly long and successful track record. So Aubrey Nader here, some of you may remember, I don't, it was actually before my time. But if you think about the 10 steps and what eventually led to the breastfeeding-friendly hospital, came originally out of UCSD. It wasn't supported particularly well at that time, so they had to actually do it outside of UCSD. But we have a fairly long track record of people that constantly pushed, that constantly ran into walls, that constantly broke ceilings. And that eventually led to why we're having Human Milk Institute today. There's now a critical mass. And that's because we have so many different programs and we have funding available, again, in part due to the Lars and Rosenquist Foundation, where we have those seed mechanisms where we can activate more people to look to human milk. So the critical mass across disciplines is increasing. UCSD is known for its highly collaborative environment. I think that is unprecedented in the world, if you think about it. People working together from all disciplines, getting together and addressing problems together. And I think that's very unique at UCSD. We're now supported by top leadership across institutions. And I think we have a great example here today. We have the CEO of UC San Diego Health, the Department Chair of Pediatrics, Vice Chancellor of Health Sciences. The Chancellor will be here later to introduce our keynote speaker shortly after lunch. Just think about that. One of the top institutes in the world, the Chancellor and other leadership positions coming here today to say, yes, we believe that there needs to be a Human Milk Institute. That's huge. And not all institutions in the world really support that. Probably not too many, actually. And again, we're embedded in a very passionate and powerful community, and we want to leverage that. We want to work together with you. And San Diego, again, is very unique when it comes to that. And last but not least, it's not just San Diego. We're really connected to many, many great scientists, many great physicians, many great champions of human milk, really, around the world. And some of them being in the room today, coming all the way from Canada, from Australia, from really many places, Oxford in the back of the room, from many, many places where human milk has a strong interest and a strong track record. So let's work together. Let's not compete. Let's work together. There's so much work to do. And doing that together will be so much more beneficial than doing that in our own little silos. All right, so that's it. I invite you to join this journey that we're on and work with us to improve the lives of infants, really everyone, and give every baby the best start to life. Thank you very much. Enjoy the program today. Thank you.